filter in.
Greetings and welcome everyone to the IBIPSA USA Wisconsin chapter event. We will begin in just a couple minutes as people keep on shuffling into the webinar. Thank you again for joining on behalf of the IBIPSA USA Wisconsin chapter and IBIPSA USA.
Yes, if someone monitors the live stream, there's a chat window that's open.
I'll look at the live stream. I'll just mute it so it doesn't interfere here, but
Right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. On behalf of myself and the entire IBIPSA USA Wisconsin chapter committee, we would like to welcome you to this webinar. This is our first quarter event for 2020, Small Business in the Energy Modeling and Simulation Marketplace. My name is Matthew Duffy, and I just want to say a couple of quick words about our chapter. We founded the IBIPSA USA Wisconsin chapter in 2018 with the goal of creating a community around building performance, energy modeling, and simulation. And we have had many and numerous engaging events and created a community that is really conducive for knowledge sharing and kind of lifting up our community. A lot of these committee members volunteer their time at local schools. It is very important to us that we encourage growth in our community, and that's one of the reasons that we have stuck together and done so well. So if any of you, I'm going to put on my IBIPSA USA hat for one moment. If any of you are interested in forming your own chapter, please reach out to chapters@ibipsa.us. If you want to get involved specifically with our chapter, wisconsin@ibipsa.us. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand it off to the recently selected 40 under 40 from In Business magazine. Of course, I was going to pump his tires before this. Our moderator today, Louis Liu of our IBIPSA USA Wisconsin committee.
Thank you, Matthew. That's very kind introduction. Welcome, everybody, to today's panel discussion. Building simulation energy modeling test how elements of building design would perform under real-world conditions. It uses a set of computer-generated calculations to help designers compare design options and predict anticipated energy consumption of a building and its system. Now, energy simulation modeling is a very powerful tool, but it is vastly underutilized. Only a tiny fraction of the building projects use simulation models to inform design. Today's roundtable will discuss the important role that small and even micro business play in the energy modeling and simulation field. Our panelists will address some of the challenges and synergies that can come out of the smaller entities being included in the design process. Like Matthew mentioned, my name is Louis Liu. I am an MEP engineer at CG Schmidt, a general contractor based in southern Wisconsin. While I don't own a small business, I do work with many design professionals ranging from larger architectural engineering firms to smaller consulting entities. recently joined the IBIPSA Wisconsin committee. I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. So as I introduce our panelists, please feel free to type your name and where you're joining us from in the chat box. We would like to get to know you a little bit as well. And you may pose question in the Q&A section anytime during the discussion and mention if you'd like the question to be addressed to a specific panelist, and we'll try to get to them at the end. To start, I'd like to welcome our first panelist, Dr. Victor Nino. Victor is the founder of EcoBalance Technologies, a startup firm that provides engineering services driving cost-effective solutions promoting a healthy indoor environment while reducing energy use in commercial and residential buildings. He holds both a PhD in mechanical engineering and an MBA from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. During his PhD work, he investigated refrigerant two-phase flow in microchannel tubes used in compact heat exchangers. Dr. Nino has more than 20 years of industrial experience, holding different positions at Modane Manufacturing Company. As a senior research engineer, he developed new heat exchanger for air conditioning system that use alternative refrigerants. As an engineering manager, he led a global team of engineers that use computer-aided engineering software to develop and optimize heat transfer products before they are physically built. He is a member of ASHRAE and currently serving as the Government Affairs Committee Chair of the ASHRAE Wisconsin chapter. Welcome, Victor. And next we have David Bradley. David is a principal at Thermal Energy Systems Specialist, where he joined in 2001 after serving as the technical coordinator of the Transys program at the University of Wisconsin. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from Swarthmore College and a Master of Science degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Wisconsin. David's work is split between software development, system modeling, and teaching. Of late, his focus has been on the development of phase change materials in the built environment. Welcome, David. Next, we have Graham Lin. Graham is the president of HabLab LLC, a firm he recently founded in 2021. Graham has worked in building performance for 10 years. Prior to this period of time, he served in the Air Force as an engineer in a research lab focused on scramjet propulsion technology. Graham has been part of the IBIPSA Wisconsin board since 2018. Last but not least, we have Dr. John Derby. John is the principal of Northland Numerics, which provides software development and consulting services with a mechanical engineering focus. He started Northland Numerics in 2011 during his mechanical engineering doctoral program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. While his thesis focused on modeling supercritical carbon dioxide power cycles for utility-scale power generation, his work kindled a passion for solving problems numerically and unlocking the full potential of today's computing platforms. Through Northland Numerics, Dr. Derby strives to help folks use computers more effectively by providing custom code written to address specific needs, as well as through education and training on computing and software development best practice. Welcome to all of our extraordinary panelists, and welcome to all the audience. Thank you for the comments, shouting out where you're joining us from. We're glad to have you here. So to get it started, we'll give each of the panelists 3 minutes to give an opening remark to tell us a little bit of the background. How did you get to where you are now? And what was the impetus, the motivation for going out on your own? Victor, would you like to start?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the invitation here. And yes, very simple for me. I started my company 2 years ago, and it was just, I got laid off pre-pandemic. I think we saw a lot of the reduction of force even before the pre-pandemic, and then the COVID-19 show up, and then basically there was no really opportunities during the pandemic. So it gave me some time to think. Basically, it was between focusing on a similar job in a well-established company or create a job that where putting my passion, where I can put my passion and something that I really love, basically crafting my own company. And that's family support was very fundamental. I think I'm married with 2 kids, and it takes time to develop a company. So that was very fundamental for me to start a new company. And then learning. So the first part, it was basically learning about my strengths and weaknesses, and then significantly improve the network. That was very key. It's a huge key was improve my network. And it was, and just to give how important was that, it was because at the beginning, when I was laid off, basically 90% of my network, it was people that I was working in the previous company. So I had to start basically from zero just to build the network, to start finding people to collaborate. And that's actually all the collaboration, creating, finding different people in different industries, complementing each other. I have my strength. There are some people that they have strengths in different fields. That's how I started moving my company to develop where we are for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victor. Yeah, it is. The pandemic has changed so much and impacted everybody. And certainly in a way, it prompted people to leave where they are now and looking for other opportunities and maybe starting their own small business. And speaking of that, Graham, I think you can have some similar experience to share. Would you like to say a little bit, how did you get to where you are now?
Sure, thanks. Yep, thanks everybody. So yeah, I had a scholarship out of college and from the Air Force, and so they sent me, I was an electrical engineer, and then they sent me to work on scramjet engines, which was a foolish decision on their part, but there I was, and I learned that I don't have to just be an electrical, and then I really wanted to do something about climate change, so yeah, I did a little more school and switched, and I've been basically just a consultant doing similar stuff for almost 10 years. Yeah, I don't know. I really like it. I feel lucky I kind of tried that as my first post-Air Force career. And my impetus for going on my own, I really wanted to have more control of stuff, like which clients I might want to work with and what kind of work. And then if I'm really lucky and I'm able to, grow and have colleagues, I'd love to sort of build a nice company culture, but we'll see. I got to support myself first. I'm almost a year in here, so thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Graham. David, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks everybody for attending. I came out this way for grad school because I got really fascinated by solar thermal energy systems. And there's a good graduate program here on that. And then I was working in the university context and supporting, doing technical support on a software tool, an energy modeling software tool called Transys. And a couple of people who had done this job before me had done a little bit of, beyond technical support, there was sort of helping people actually create simulations. Transys can be a little bit complicated to use. And so they had been doing a little bit of side consulting work. And when their time allotment was up at the university, it was a limited term job. When their time allotment was up, they figured they would just sort of, we'll finish up these last few consulting projects and then I'll go out and look for a real job. And that was, 2001. We've sort of managed to parlay those last few consulting jobs into something resembling a legitimate operation.
Yeah, got to take the opportunity while you have it. Last but not least, John, would you like to talk a little bit about how you started your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is fun. I went back to school for my PhD, and then within the first year, there was this entrepreneurial boot camp offered by the UW Business School. It was a summer program, and they advertised free food, and I heard it was really good free food. So I thought, yeah, okay, a week of free food. This is awesome. And it was really fortunate that I went because it sort of something, sparked, and the stuff they were talking about, I realized I don't want to start like a big business or this and that, but I kind of want to do this on my own and just be a consultant and have my own sort of shop. And So that kind of got me thinking about it. And then during my PhD work, I was doing a lot of Fortran coding and a lot of scripting around that. And I realized that I liked it a lot. And I had a friend who was working at was Energy Center of Wisconsin. It's changed its names a few times. It's now Slipstream. And I was talking to him about how, like, yeah, I really like using computers, and I kind of want to try to get paid to program for people. And he said, "Oh, we got this tool that we're trying to automate," and kind of brought me in, and he and I worked on it sort of unofficially. And I realized, like, yeah, there's potential here, and it's just kind of been growing since then. And it's actually really fortuitous that I was talking to him, because that was how I got into building energy modeling sort of in the first place. I'd been doing utility scale generation modeling, and then he sort of opened my eyes to this world of building energy simulations and the potential for making it better by using programming best practices and things like that. So that's kind of been my niche ever since.
That's awesome. It's just incredible how a university can bring so many people together. The connection that you make can lead to so many, potential, even starting your own business as well. So that's awesome. Thank you for all of you for the opening remark. So let's start with providing a context for our audience. Talk a little bit about the building simulation and energy modeling, and how is your services kind of fit into the process of design and construction. And I just like to lay out a little background of the four common types of modeling that we see. There's a design performance modeling, which is more earlier stage when you add a conceptual schematic design. You don't have an engineering system incorporated yet, trying to have a understanding early on. You do a design performance modeling, and there's a building energy modeling, which is BEM, like we all are more familiar with. It covers throughout design development to contract document. It helps predict building's anticipated energy use and the corresponding savings as compared to a standard baseline, like building code, right? And then there's a building operations modeling. It's when your construction started, you start operating the building, and how you can introduce the actual utility bills, use the pattern, the hours of operations to kind of compare how is it performing compared to how you design it to be, right? And then there's the fourth one is the project resource modeling, which is one of the most extensive study out of the four that really look at the interrelationship of all the different resources, consumptions and efficiency and conservation kind of throughout the project. So I'm gonna have each of you to kind of briefly talk about the services that your business provide and how does it fit into this process of building design and construction overall. So Graham, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I don't know if I'm representative. I feel like possibly a more common type of practitioner. I work with architects and building owners, new construction generally. So energy simulation, daylight simulation. I've gotten into doing sort of things that need computational fluid dynamics and some hygrothermal stuff. So, and then also I do offer outside of simulation commissioning and sort of renewable energy studies. So.
Awesome. Victor, would you like to talk a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Basically, the vision of ecobalance technologies is they improve the quality of life inside the buildings in the most sustainable way. So it's basically improving comfort. I'm more focused on the comfort and improve the indoor air quality. So based on that, then I see a huge opportunity just doing a lot of design. And that's basically what I'm focusing more into the design part. Starting from thermodynamic calculations, basically from a general energy modeling when you started now, including more specifics, and then you go into detail on with computer fluid dynamics, basically air flow distribution, and then later on, when there is the opportunity, is basically measuring is a lot of parameters, and then try to bring that information feedback into modeling. So we learn more about the data outside and then just bring it back. So that's basically kind of like the core engineering that we do here. But then of course, everything has to be related with energy, basically from generation basically transfer, transformation, conversion, and then use. So those are the three things that because also we do solar photovoltaic design, just to try to decentralize energy production and so on. And that's basically the core that we're developing and focusing more into the residential, commercial, and helping, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, basically at the beginning, you cannot work with big companies. It's hard to have that credibility when you are small, but then you find different other companies, small architectural firms that they don't have modeling or some other things that you can partner together to highlight the strengths of both companies or many companies together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree with you. There's a big potential when you talk about how to improve the indoor air quality, right? When you're trying to also reduce the energy consumption at the same time, I feel like sometimes it's almost like contradicting to each other. If you have the existing system, you're trying to increase the airflow, right? You're trying to increase the cooling and heating load. But there's certainly a lot of different things we can dive into. And like you were mentioning of decarbonization, we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But David, would you like to also share a little bit what's your service provide and how does it fall into this process?
Sure. Well, definitely the areas we work on are sort of the second and third of the four categories that Louis mentioned earlier. In our experience, so a lot of energy modeling tools out there, and as part of what we do is developing energy modeling tools, as well as then implementing models. And I think as a developer, when you sit down to write an energy modeling tool, when you sit down to develop a piece of software that's going to model something, you can build in more assumptions or you can build in less assumptions. If you build in more assumptions, the end users are going to have a simple job of implementing what it is that is put before them, but they may not have all that much flexibility. The more assumptions you build in, the sort of less flexible perhaps the tool that ends up. And the fewer assumptions you build in, the more flexible the tool you have, but the more vastly difficult or time consuming it becomes to implement a model. And so the tool that we work with is intentionally on the side of very flexible, but not necessarily easy to implement things. So the kind of modeling that we do tends to be on the, when a more, say, mainstream energy modeling person is faced with a building that's got some strange device in it and asks the question, well, how on earth are we going to model this wind turbine driven fuel cell electrolyzer mess? So that's the kind of area that we find ourselves in. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work on district energy modeling. These district heating systems, district cooling systems have become very interesting all of a sudden. And the tools that we work with lend themselves extremely well to dealing with what you have, in a large ambient loop that's buried piping that's snaking its way through an entire community. So that's sort of the weird and wild frontiers of energy modeling is where we like to sit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's so much how you define a problem, what assumption that you make. There's so many tools out there. You can get a totally different answer, but you need to have a really defined parameter to really get to something that's very useful to help you inform the design. So that's very true. John, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I kind of work around the edges, I guess. So the type of services I provide is to support the engineers using the different tools and different models. So I don't really focus on, like new construction, things like that, or retrofits, or, very complex things like Transys is capable of simulating. Where I sort of provide value is to come in and make the engineers, the folks, more efficient at using whatever tools they're using. So, things like like automating Do2 runs or making transits easier to set up a run, things like that, where, if it's, my business model is basically, if I can save the engineers time, just take a fraction of that and pay me, what the time and the money you saved, and everybody's happy because they're, more efficient and I'm making money. And so it's kind of a fun business model. So yeah, I don't really have a great answer there. I just I'd say I support all four really as needed.
Yeah, I mean, we need the software first before we have all the modelers be able to utilize them and help them solve real world problems. So your work is certainly very important. So next, I would like to talk a little bit the relationship between the small business and the larger entities, right? In the world of, let's say, consumer product, it's a little different, right? We see oftentimes the larger corporation, they are consolidating the smaller firms, right? Take Amazon, for example, it is killing all the small business, right? Even sometimes larger shopping malls are closing down because of how convenient it is and how low cost it's able to do, but it's really not supporting the communities needed, right? However, it's a little different scenes here when it comes to providing engineering services. When we talk about small business in energy modeling and simulation, we actually see more and more of those smaller business coming out over time. So would you like to talk a little, what unique role do small and even micro business play in the energy modeling and simulation field? And can you describe the dynamic between a small micro business and a larger engineering design firms? David, would you like to comment on this one?
Sure, and I might say that we have not had an offer from Amazon to buy us up yet. So
well, you couldn't tell us though if you did.
That's true. No, I mean, I think listening to each one of the four panelists, I mean, each one of us has found a small niche that serves a need in the larger community. I don't think that I can't envision there being a large company that does the sort of one-off modeling kind of projects that we do. I couldn't imagine, the John's business model or Graham's business model. They all serve a need, a sometimes need that exists in a larger entity. And certainly you could see some of the larger engineering firms have a small, modeling branch, and many do. And then I think, I don't know, my sense is that we serve the next level down where even that modeling branch, sees a particular kind of issue once in a while and can't maybe necessarily afford to keep somebody on staff who specializes in that, but who can, as needed, go out and find a smaller business that does do that sort of thing all the time. Or maybe they don't always need process efficiency or process improvement, but when they do, they can go to somebody like John who specializes in that. They don't necessarily always need daylight modeling. Maybe that comes up on 1 in 10 projects, and they can go to somebody like Graham when that happens. Or likewise with a more holistic view of the building, that's when I think somebody might reach out to a smaller company like what Victor is doing.
Yeah, that's very true. This is a very niche market, and energy modeling, and even finding more niche under this spectrum, it's certainly making your work more unique. Graham, you have worked for a larger.
If I could add one little more thing, we don't have a ton of clients. What we have is, say 20 clients, and maybe one of them has, or some of them have a project for us maybe once every couple of years. So it's a situation where we stay busy by having enough clients who have periodic needs for what we do. That was what I wanted to add in there, sort of scale, if you will.
It's very true, and also very important to maintain those relationships, and which we'll touch on a little bit as well. So I just wonder, Graham, would you be able to share a little insight, because you have worked for a larger kind of engineering consulting and that was kind of consolidated with a bigger architectural engineering firm. How is that relationship and dynamics play out between, small business doing your own versus working with a bigger group?
Yeah, it's I was at a 10-person firm. I did an internship at like a 5-person New York office, and then worked at a 10-person firm, and then we got acquired by a 1,000-person firm, and now it's just me. So I don't know if I don't have numbers, but I feel like there's a trend towards these big firms bringing in these services. So I definitely see that as sort of my competition. And so, my challenge is to articulate why I think my angle on it has value compared to sort of the integrated model. But that, I think it's more common. I don't know. I only know what I know, but I don't know if anybody else can comment on like out in the world, are there more small businesses doing what we do versus just integrated part of larger firms? I think it's more larger firms, but.
Any comment from Victor and John?
Sure. Yeah, I came actually from a very global company. I worked for 15 years in a global company. Basically, yes, we were all around the world, in Germany, India, China. And one of the things that I learned a lot, and that's basically is the networking. The networking, you do a lot of networking within a large organization. So basically you have the product development team, the simulation team, then basically the machine shop, the application engineers, the sales engineers, and so on. And then when you start, you need to learn what is the value chain. What is the value chain of where you're participating, your mission of your company, where are you going to be there? But then you can actually, when you're an entrepreneur, you can create the same value chain, but it's just different companies. There are some companies that they do only simulation, product development. They do basically sample prototyping. They do that, and then it's basically just to also connect with them. And I think that was my message as well. Is basically you can have a good business model by just having a good collaboration with different alliances and start competing with large companies as well. I think I don't see. And from a building standpoint, it's pretty similar. Then there are these large architectural firms that they have their own energy modeling, their architects, the commissioning department, all of that stuff. But then also there are some small architectural firms, there are some smaller simulations that you can partner as well and have a very good product.
Yeah, that's very true. I totally agree. David, you mentioned earlier, it's oftentimes you have, a smaller group of relationship with a client, and the reputation is really important. At CG Schmidt, we actually had an office, it's written on the wall. One of the quotes from the Schmidt members said, "The reputation takes a lifetime to build, but a moment to break." So it's really important to maintain those relationships, but also figure out how can you, to advertise and network to reach out to more clients. So I'd like to ask whoever may like to take this question, what are some effective advertising or networking techniques that you have found over time? And maybe what are some of the techniques are not as efficient?
This is a really hard, it's hard to say. We have tried advertising, we've tried responding to RFPs, we've tried, writing for grant applications and things. We've tried going to conferences and just sort of networking and meeting people. To be honest, none of those have been particularly efficient ways of getting work for us. The way that we have found to get work is by developing a small amount of expertise in something, doing training classes in it because it's something that other people need to do. And then that is a way of beginning a relationship with somebody who is doing something similar. They are doing work. When they get stuck, maybe they come to us and ask us just to look over their shoulder. Or maybe they run out of time and budget. I don't think that's ever happened before, but it could. on a project that you run out of time on it, and you need somebody to sort of come in quickly at the end and whip something together. So and then we try really hard with those few relationships that develop to nurture them as best we possibly can and keep them around, because honestly, it's the repeat stuff that that keeps us going.
Yeah, that's very true. Any other comment?
I mean, luck. When Graham was getting started last summer, he and I chatted a little bit, and he asked me a similar question, and I told him this is very unsatisfying. But for me, it was just the luck and the right people at the right times, and then just sort of work begets work. And if you do good work, I think that your name spreads, and people know, like, yeah, like this guy can get stuff done. You should talk to him. And then to add on to what David said, it is, I would say most of my clients right now are people that this is like the third or fourth project I've worked with them on. So I don't tend to go out and get new clients every few years. It's the repeats and the people that you kind of establish a long-term relationship with that work well.
Yeah, Graham, you were.
I mean, this question is huge. Is this like one of the Q&A questions that you're kind of weaving in here very
eloquently?
Sure.
Very carefully. Oh, okay. Well, because there is a question in there about marketing, and to answer like Robert's question, I haven't used social media at all. I haven't tried. I've thought a lot about marketing. I've mostly just gone with the fact that it seems like most relationships, at least in architecture engineering world, are basically very one-on-one relationships, and so far that seems to basically be true. I've just tried to focus on opportunities to network in person, and I'm even, I've done some cold calling. I thought that sounded horrible at first, and it's actually not so bad. So that's about as much wisdom as I can add, but I'm trying to add new clients, and so I do think about it a lot. It is certainly not easy. I think somebody in the Q&A was talking about how it's really hard to get in with building owners, particularly that have a lot of filters and just huge organizations. And I do not have any insight there, but I think giving talks at events, I think, is a thing that has worked. I'm trying to work on that. But so far, my luck and success has been very much people that I have known, people that I've known in my network, just like completely unexpected opportunities that came up because someone not even in the field knew an architect, so and a certain amount of privilege allowed me to even start this thing. So I'm sort of just writing on that until I can hopefully build a business. But go ahead.
I think I also wanted to add that for a long time, it felt like, we as a small business were feeding upwards into a larger business on, a couple of different larger businesses. Recently, through this IBIPSA thing, and we've also started what we call the Energy Nerds Lunch lately. There has started to be interaction between lots of these little companies. We get together sort of monthly or every couple of months, whether through this chapter or just on the side, to just sort of talk about whatever we want to talk about. And sometimes we talk about engineering stuff, and sometimes we talk about not engineering stuff. But it has led to some collaborative efforts that I don't think would have ever come about before. Graham and I were talking about he's trying to model a ship or a boat of some kind, and we got talking about that. John comes and tells me, he keeps making improvements to transits that I didn't even know I wanted, but they're really great. So I think the communities like this offer some peer-to-peer stuff, but there's also this up and down from the small companies to the larger entities, and that one's a little harder. Of course, that's where the money is. This stuff in between here, we're all scrounging in some ways.
I think one of the challenge of expanding the business is oftentimes the design team and business owner, they don't know what's the right question to ask. They don't know how to define a problem. They don't know when to bring in the energy modeler to help them make informed decision. And can we elaborate a little bit? Because I feel like if you can help them bridge that, knowledge gap to help them understand the value of it, and the demand for that will obviously increase as well. How can you work with the design team to help them understand when will be a good time to bring you in and show them the value of that?
That is tough. I mean, I have been shocked. I really enjoy sort of the getting to know people part of this, and I've been particularly talking to lots of architects and even people that I assume know what LEED is, know what energy modeling is. Sometimes they make a comment, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what do you think is happening? Like I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, oh, I do building performance consulting, and they immediately thought I was a energy service contractor, an ESCO, which I'm sure many people in the audience know what that is. It's not like completely dissimilar, but it's like a very specific business model where you, like a big organization hires a firm to like super optimize their plant and their facilities, and they have like contractors on staff. It's like a whole different business model. And I was like talking to them for a while. I was like, okay, you think that's what I'm doing? Like, so I don't know. I think supporting big organizations like this, like a BIPSA, can help. That's about as much as I can come up with, other than one-on-one education. It is really striking how opaque our services are, I think. And I thought it was more well understood, like LEED's been around for 20 years. I thought, okay, yeah, energy simulation and integrated design and all this. And I have been a little bit surprised. Anyway.
I think it depends a lot on, I think it varies a lot from project to project. I mean, we've been brought in on some projects very, very, very early on, and we're able to be participants in the schematic design discussions. I won't even call them tasks because they were just discussions at that point. We've been brought in on projects. Actually, one of my proudest moments as an energy modeler was that I got given a set of 90% complete construction drawings for a very complicated central plant that was using a turbine to generate some electricity, and using waste heat off the turbine to run some absorption chillers, all sorts of fancy things. And it just wasn't going to work. And the energy modeling got started way too late in that case. And I think the final set of drawings that I got was actually scratched on a napkin. It says, what if we redid it like this, kind of thing. So, I mean, I think it varies so much from project to project. And, you used to see a graph where at the beginning, the cost of making changes is really low and does nothing but go way up. At the way end, a cost of making a change is very expensive, whereas the effort at making that change does the exact opposite. So I think defining, one of the things that I find is, especially with energy modeling, it's easy to say we want to do a project and we want to do some energy modeling, and refining that we want to do some energy modeling down into what questions do we need to answer from an energy model or a comfort model or whatever it may be. Really refining those questions can direct, when's an appropriate time within the project scope to talk about that specific need. Going from this nebulous discussion of a project to narrowing it down into specific questions that need to be answered, I think can really drive where those questions get asked and when.
And framing it that way to the person you're talking to. Because, like Graham's example of, do you actually know what I do here? Like if somebody's never thought of like, what question are we actually trying to answer? To just present it as that can kind of change somebody's paradigm and make things a lot more sort of smooth moving forward.
Exactly. And what I could add is basically, and answering basically the two questions in the panel from David and Robert, is basically I think as engineers, we know where we're working and where is the value. It's just how to market that value. And unfortunately, when we are starting, it needs some investment to market that. especially is either us moving into a marketing position and learn about websites and social media and start putting that promotion. So internalizing that with our own time or outsourcing it. But then outsourcing, and that's always the problem. It's like we cannot fund that. But I think at the beginning, yes, we have to do what is available to us. That is heavily networking, working with people that they know exactly what we do, but they might not have that service within their own company. But then later on, I think starting to put some effort on marketing to grow your business. I think then that's what I will do, is basically bring someone who is specializing on marketing to help me start putting the better words. As an engineer, I can understand David when he talks to me about the last time, turbine, fuel cell, all those. Maybe not anymore, but for some other people, they might not understand the value that we're providing. So we need to market it well.
I just want to add too, David and Robert, what problem are you trying to solve with marketing, right? Is it the nebulous, I want more clients? Because that's sort of like, I want to do building energy modeling, right? But if you can be more specific about like, what type of clients do you want, or what specific things would you love to do? Maybe that's not Facebook marketing. Maybe that's, joining a BIPSA and going to events and things like that. So just kind of clarify exactly what problem you're trying to solve. And the more specific you can get, I think the more clear an answer might be.
Yeah, exactly. Marketing is basically just explain the value of your company. So the profitability comes later. If you are really well, you understand your segments, you understand basically, yes, the value that you're adding, and everyone understands that exactly. So I think networking is the best way because people understand what we are doing.
Awesome. Yeah. And on that note, keep that specific question coming. I'm going to address one more question before we talk more on the audience Q&A. So our built environment has created a staggering 40% of the world's emissions. And the architect, engineers, owners, as well as modelers, they all play a key role in decarbonizing the embodied and operational carbons. So I would like our panelists to address a little bit, how does your work, how does energy modeling and simulation in general, this field, contributing to this decarbonization process, and what does it take to accelerate it? What does it take to make it more successful?
I can speak to two things that have come up for us recently. One is there's been a shift towards more interest in passive or semi-passive systems. So, we've got air, it's way too wet. How do we dehumidify it? Can we do that by blowing it through some tubes that we bury in the ground? So people have some intuition that a scheme might work. And so we found ourselves asked to model that sort of stuff lately. So that's this sort of trend towards a little bit more passive rather than active systems has been one aspect of that. I think the other aspect of it is that within the last 6 months, the topic of electrification has come up. So while we're not dealing directly with the decarbonization end of things, what we've been finding ourselves dealing with is, let's move everything to electric sources, make as many of those renewable as possible. But our work has sort of relied on the trust that the source energy of that electricity will be decarbonized by other parties. So we're sort of at the end point of that and definitely moving away from fossil fuel combustion modeling to electric sources, which I mean is some very interesting stuff, and provides its own energy modeling challenges.
Yeah, we've talked about trying to have another session for at least the Wisconsin chapter talking about electrification, because that, you think about 10 years ago, renewable energy, decarbonization, like we weren't really super involved with some of that stuff because it was too expensive, well, particularly renewables. But now I feel like our sort of old bread and butter of talking about efficiency is kind of, I don't know that it's not passe, but it often is cheaper to do renewables than it is to do efficiency measures, which was not the case not that long ago. So, we got to evolve, and tons of people in ABIPS are doing amazing work. Last fall, there was a talk about real-time modeling of carbon emissions, or fairly real-time, based on a bunch of really interesting NREL data. So I won't try to butcher it, but it was absolutely amazing work. And I hope all our tools have that built in soon. And then just also figuring out how to couple with electric systems as a sort of a technical challenge. There's lots of folks doing really interesting work there. So I think we're getting there, but yeah, our role, I don't know. I do sometimes worry that they just think of us as efficiency people, and so our value is sort of getting maybe a little clouded, and so we need to continue to think and advocate for how we continue to, help the whole system become decarbonized through whatever, thinking through electrification problems and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. And kind of along that line, one of our audience, Paul from Persoco Air Barrier System, kind of made a comment that in new commercial construction, sometimes the quality of the air barrier installation is low because, oftentimes they're trying to choose the lower cost material. So similarly, for a lot of other, suggestion you made through the energy modeling, you're recommending different type of system, different type of materials. It may be a little more expensive, and then, getting pushback from the designer or contractor saying we cannot pursue them. How do you communicate with the team to make them see the value and actually, execute the work that you've done instead of constantly getting a pushback?
I think that comes down to, we try and stay away from economic analysis as much as humanly possible, but costs do enter into every project, whether we want them to or not. And, I think oftentimes there is a trade-off between first cost and operational cost. And so by doing high fidelity modeling over a year, or even maybe over 20 years, I mean, certainly in the case of projects where there's ground heat exchange or seasonal thermal storage, the economics of the first costs turn around at some point. And I think that doing long-term energy modeling is a way of showing that. I mean, whether it's as simple as, a simple payback period or some more complicated, complex economic analysis. I think that's the first place that we go to check that sort of stuff.
Back of the envelope calculations can be really useful for financial stuff if you can show orders of magnitude in either direction. Like, hey, look, we don't know all the assumptions. There's a lot of unknowns here, but if we just take wild guesses, you're going to save a lot of money. Or, yeah, no, this doesn't make any sense at all. Don't pursue it. And sometimes even, it's close. Like, this might be worth a more detailed analysis. But I don't know, just kind of to jump back to talking to that owner or the boss. Anytime I've ever tried to pitch an idea or sell something, it hasn't gone well. But anytime I've just not actually really cared that much and just was trying to educate the person or just having a conversation, it tends to, like, more positive things come out of it. So I don't know if that's useful or not, but if you can tend to just sort of talk to somebody about, like, what matters to you and how can I help, versus like, I'm going to solve all of your problems if you pay me X amount of money. People tend to get defensive when they detect sales pitches.
Correct. Yeah, what I could add is basically, decarbonization is becoming very important right now, basically all climate action, but it's also driven by policies. So policies is basically all the minimum requirements by codes, by building codes, by the state. So basically, I think we can encourage ourselves just to participate in those discussions, explain, we have the tools to explain the what if scenarios of changing things within a building to impact some policies. But basically is moving towards the minimum requirements. Wisconsin, we are with an old building code. Decarbonization needs a better air barriers, better building envelope, more efficient HVAC systems. We also need to make sure that indoor air quality is also well taken care of. And energy models can do that prediction and start providing those measures and understanding the priority. And yes, associated with the financial cost about investment, operational cost, just to have a really good model that help make decisions. But one of the things that we also need to do is basically start advocating for better building codes. Just moving towards everything that today, for example, ASHRAE or the IECC is providing, it's just minimum requirements. When you and those are minimum requirements. We want to just move also ahead if we want to. Cities are starting to establish these goals at 2030 and 2050 about reducing the energy for buildings. We can help out with a lot of modeling just to accomplish those goals.
Thank you very much. As we are kind of getting close to the clock here, I would like to have each of our panelists to give a short 30-second closing remark about what information or piece of advice do you wish the audience to walk away from today's session? Graham, would you like to start?
Ooh. All right, piece of advice. I mean, boy, you related to small business, starting a small business specifically?
Yep. We can come back later if you want to wait.
Sorry, yeah, maybe somebody else has a better answer.
No worry, whoever ready, feel free to start.
I can start. Basically, networking. I think networking is the really important way. When you start a business, basically, you have to understand where you're going to internalize and where you're going to outsource. So, and networking is basically understanding what you can outsource. Then later on, when now you strengthen all these alliances with other people, then you start thinking about, okay, maybe we can bring this capability in-house and then continue growing. And I think networking, especially now with Zoom, is becoming very easy. Just set up a meeting with somebody who lives in, I see some people from Indonesia taking this call, or from Canada, just sit down and just understand what are the type of strengths and that we can put together. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Victor. John?
Yeah, I'll follow next. And I agree completely with Victor that networking is incredibly important. And Robert, I see your question that's related. I don't know. I think jumping way back, luck is a big part. For your specific stuff, I don't know if there's like conferences or, things like ASHRAE or BIPSA that these people would tend to go to that you could just kind of, join. Because I want to add, like, the networking is so important. But I remember when I was starting, like during that boot camp, they were talking about the importance of networking. Even back then, it was really high up on the list of things that you needed to do to be successful. And I didn't quite get it. It always seemed like a forced, or like a, man, I don't want to go and like schmooze people and like put on my nice suit and like, try to, oh, hey, I heard you have a cat. You like, it's, for me, that doesn't work. Like, I've realized networking is more just like making connections with people and just kind of talking and hanging out and not trying to like, I didn't come to this event to try to like drum up business. I came here because I really like Graham and David. It turns out Victor and I have a common friend that we're really close with, and it was just a chance to kind of hang out and talk to friends, frankly. So I don't know if you can kind of approach networking for your business as sort of just more of a social, we're all people hanging out together. I think that's I don't know. I guess that would be my advice. Because then even if your business fails, maybe you got some new friends out of it, and really, what's more important, right? Feeding your family or getting beers with David? I don't know.
I think too that there's a great deal of benefit to diversity. Like I don't think the energy modeling community would be as strong if it were made up of all enormous firms, because I think as Victor was describing, those tend to be somewhat insular. You know, your network tends to be within that group. Also, I don't think that the community would be as strong if it was made up entirely of 1, 2, 3 person micro firms. I think there's a great deal of, I mean, it kind of fascinates me in a way that a city as small as ours can support as many, you know, small businesses and some medium-sized businesses, all of which are doing energy modeling. I think it speaks to the globalization in a way that the global connectivity that Victor was mentioning. Very little of our work has anything to do with what's going on in Wisconsin. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 projects in Wisconsin over the course of 25 years. So I think that diversity is really the key to all of this. You know, different sized firms, and that echoes what John and Victor and Graham were all saying about networking. It's important to get out of our bubbles and make connections between all of these very diverse groups.
Thank you, David. Anything to add, Graham?
Yeah. Specific advice, you know, I guess if you're going, you know, you're running a business. I mean, I can't say that I'm like a shining example of entrepreneur at this point. I've only been doing it for like a year, but, you know, just thinking very specifically about your market and how you're going to sort of get into it. You know, like one thing that's really become clear to me is, like, at least in new construction, you know, the cycles are very long, and like you have to know people ahead of time in order for your name to be available when the project happens. And it's, you know, I thought I knew that, you know, having worked in the industry for a while, but it definitely, you know, it's just kind of a, you know, I think planning around the fundamentals of your market is huge, and maybe that'll help you think through, like, the question about trying to get into contact with some like high ups at utility companies. I don't know their business cycles, but you know, just if you're going to start something, yeah, have a really clear idea of what your market is and how you're going to try to get to know them, and also like talking, like doing networking, exactly what John said. Like, it really, I was afraid of cold calling because I just thought that sounded so gross, and like I was like a penny stock sleazy salesman or something. But like, it really is just the same as meeting somebody in person if you're willing to be nice, and especially if you like do some you know, homework and try to understand who this person is. You know, it's just you know, it can be fun, and it doesn't have to be like a, I don't know that many people in our industry that are like high pressure sales success. You know, we're not selling widgets. We're basically selling relationships, I think. That feels like almost the whole thing, and with technical expertise coupled. So
Yeah,
that's what I got.
Thank you to all of our panelists for an excellent discussion today. And if you can just provide your contact info again in the chat box for our audience to reach out for any questions or project inquiries, or just want to reach out and connect your network, that would be wonderful. We'd like to thank IBIPSA USA for the support. This recording will be made available and posted next week. Last but not least, thank you to all the audience for joining us today all over the world. We hope you walk away better understanding the role that small and micro business play in the energy modeling and simulation marketplace, and hope you feel inspired to advance your career either into this field or better utilize this tool in your next project. We look forward to seeing you at our next quarterly event in the summer. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Louis.
Indeed. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for moderating, Louis.
Yeah.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.